Why, hello there, and welcome to another episode of the Innovantage Podcast, where business meets tech to bring you your competitive edge. As always, I am your host, Max, and it is my ongoing duty and job to actually explore that edge between business and technologies. And today, we are going to be talking about something very interesting. We're going to be talking about culture, we're going to be talking about leadership, we're going to be talking about organizational change, and we're going to be talking about the role technology plays in all of these things. And to help me do that, I am joined by my guest, Mr. Stijn Staes, who is the founder and advisor at Stappen at Sten and the transformational counselor and podcast host for Studio Sten. So, Sten, hi, welcome to the show.
Thank you. And I must say, Max, it is an honor to be here together with you to talk about all these topics because in this world, believe it is very important to attach quite some importance and insights in these, especially on leadership diversity in
I
this
agree.
world.
I agree. Leadership diversity is something that I have omitted in my introduction, but it is something that I would like to focus on in the episode today and the general role diversity plays in corporate cultures today and the role it will play in the cultures of tomorrow. And it is a very hot topic nowadays. Diversity
Absolutely.
cannot be escaped from. But before we get into that, I would like for you to
Mhm.
talk a little bit about yourself. So, who are you? Where you came from? What is it that you do? And where does your experience lie for everybody listening?
How long do you want to go back, Max?
Well, let's start in after the birth of Christ, and we'll see where that takes us.
Well, you know, my My career started somewhere in after that I did my studies in nursing and hospital management because what I found out, and also through my engagement in the youth movement with the scouting, was that I thrive when I can get the best out of people and to look for innovation, to make things better, to make people better, and how we can grow as human beings. And therefore, if we can grow as human beings, our businesses and our and what we do, what we produce can grow. And I've always been fascinating by that. I did that in a long time in all kind of places all over the world when I worked with Doctors Without Borders in very difficult and harsh circumstances, because there you meet the good and the bad of what humans can bring to each other. And I did that in Belgium for quite a lot of organizations. I was a general manager at the biggest youth institution in Belgium in the private sector. And I've always been driven by, what is that a human being and how can we get the best out of him? And so since 6 years, I do that as an independent coach, executive coaching. I have my own podcast and bring this inspiration and insights into the world about how we can transform human beings and therefore organizations.
Thank you very much, first and foremost. And my first question that I would like to start from is how do you feel that your career trajectory and your experience, specifically now in executive coaching, impacts that diversity that we have started talking about? So, what do you see over the long term that you have
Mhm,
spent working with enterprises and working outside of the whole business culture, just generally talking to
mhm.
people and seeing what kind of different people there are. Um, how do you approach diversity? What it even is for you? Because now I feel that it's just becoming a buzzword and nobody really understands what
Mm,
stands behind it.
yeah. Well, I believe that deep, deep, deep down inside of us, we're all the same. And so diversity is sometimes used indeed as a buzzword to label people and put all kinds of labels and names and cultures on them. But basically, what I found out is underneath all this diversity labels, we are all the same. And we are all people who want to be seen, people who want to be heard. And so the way that we approach that as leaders should be adapted on how people want to be seen or how people want to be heard. And that might differ from culture to culture. And of course, we have people from the East, from Africa, and they have all different kind of backgrounds. But deep down under, the human side is always the same. We want to connect with each other. We want to be loved. We want to be seen. We want to be heard. And we just have to find the gateways to get there. And for me, so diversity is not only having a diverse colored or LGBTQ community in your business, but it is a diversity in communicating and learning to communicate with all these different kind of people.
And that's an
Yeah.
interesting point, though. Like, communication is one of those key cornerstones that I
Mm,
feel stop many organizations, especially smaller organizations, from implementing a more diverse workforce. Because then you go for what you know. You go for people that speak the same language as you, that have the same cultural
exactly.
background as you, and that's the default. And how do you feel that sort of communication flow? What can you do to make it, the same at the basic level, like you said, where we are all the same on the inside, but how do we communicate
Mm,
in the same way to
mm,
make
yeah.
those pathways more efficient?
Well, I think one of the most important attitudes that leaders or anybody should have in this topic is curiosity.
Mm.
Because, when you stay curious, you stay out of the judgment. And that is what often happens when miscommunication happens between people, is that they have already a judgment about what you're supposed to say or what the other one is supposed to answer, and we don't listen anymore. And so when you enter into a conversation with curiosity and you ask open question and you're curious what is happening with the other person, are his needs, what are his concerns, without any judgment on it, um, that is for me the entrance to the right communication. Staying curious all the time long.
Sounds very easy, right? Just be curious, just be open, just remember that people are people and you are also a person, well, supposedly, and besides all of the bots that are probably listening to our podcast here right now as well. But
Hmm.
still, I'm guessing that there is a lot of challenges along the way for leaders trying to build diverse teams. And what would you say the key challengers then are?
You mean when leaders are confronted with? Don't get
When
the
you're
question
trying
quite
to
right.
build a diverse team or you're trying to build something larger, a diverse culture in an organization,
Hmm.
what are the typical challenges that you may face? Because on the
Yeah,
surface, it sounds very simple, right? Just talk to people,
yeah.
remember that people are people, and be curious, like you said, about what makes them tick, and everything will be
Hmm.
fine. But I'm guessing that it's a bit more complex than that.
Yeah. Well, indeed, it is also, you know, like you said, we tend to get involved with the people that speak the same language as us, and not only speak the same language, but also act and think the way that we think, which is a huge mistake because in that way, you create only followers. And so it is very important for leaders to look for people who can be critical, not not dismantling or not, but that can be critical to you and to what you say and to what you think, and but giving you constructive feedback, which of course implies that you are able to accept feedback that is not in the same thinking that you have. And that is, I think, a big challenge because as a leader, we often think that we have the right thing, in mind, or that we have uh, that what we think or what we say is the right thing, and to let go of our own belief or our own conviction of our own truth, um, and let the voice of others speak, even if it is in disagreement what you think. That's a big challenge.
So I guess then it's about building I don't know, an infrastructure of that giving and receiving feedback, because I'm guessing that, there's the right way to give feedback and then there's the wrong way to give feedback. And as a manager myself, I have
Mhm.
studied extensively the types of feedback that people can give and the instruments that you can have in order to give feedback. Like, for example, a very classical one is the feedback wrap that comes from Agile. And the more classical one is, well, I'm going to name it, but it's the sandwich that you have where everybody likes giving feedback in that manner. So, in your experience, does
Mhm.
it then all become about safety, where you feel safe to both receive feedback and give feedback, and you understand that, well, if somebody is giving you a piece of feedback, even if the form is not ideal, mm, the desire, the motivation behind that activity is genuine.
Mm. Well, there are two words here that are very important. It's trust and intention. And in order to have proper communication, there needs to be a basis of trust, which creates the safety. And trust means that no matter what, um, you can rely on the other one, that he will be there for you, and that he will speak his truth and be honest and respectful to you. And the second part of the intention, when you are giving feedback, both parties need to be aware of, why am I giving feedback?
Mm.
And this is something that is often overseen, because the feedback is not only it is not only about the work that you do and the work that you do for one another. This is about giving feedback so the company can raise, and what you're doing, the service that you can offer, that you're offering, can be can get back can get is getting better, and you're serving your clients better. So the purpose of feedback is not being right or wrong, or who is right or who is wrong. The purpose of feedback is getting your company and getting the service that you offer to clients better. And when you put feedback in that perspective, you get you decharge, or you decharge the emotional side of it, because often feedback is something considered as shit, and there is guilt and blame, anger and sadness, and all these kinds of emotions that are involved with feedback. But when you give the feedback with an intention that is for clients, for the company, you do it with a purpose. And that is often forgotten. The feedback is often something about the ego, being right or being wrong, and convincing another one what he should do or what he should not do. And so lifting that up with a purpose, uh, it decharges all the emotions that comes along with feedback.
So would you say that that only works at like a team level where you know everybody face to face when everybody knows what to expect? Or is it something that can be scaled up to a larger organization by means of specific tools or rules or just general culture? Like, for
Well,
example, you may not know the CEO of a company, but you may know his character, like what he stands for, or is it
mm,
impossible to scale?
I think if it would be impossible to scale, then it would be, well, why shouldn't you give feedback to your CEO?
Good question. Can you though? Like a
I
lot of the
love
times
feedback.
you don't
I
even
love
know
feedback.
people.
I always, when I was a manager or a CEO, I always wanted feedback. I even asked for it, even to the people who were cleaning my room. Is this the right time for you? Should I, when is the right time for you? How do you want to clean? What do you want to do with my desk? Just talk with people. And, even when we are talking here now, I could give you some feedback about your questions, but it would be important to say, it's because I'm giving you feedback or you give me feedback because we want to make a great podcast so our listeners, they get better insights. That's the aim of the podcast, isn't it? So this is not only on team level. I think it is important to create a culture of open feedback with purpose on all levels. If you are not able to do that in all the levels of your organization, well, then it's a bit sad, I think, because we all need feedback, and we all, even Bill Gates, he has a coach. I mean, he wants feedback as well. It's the only way that you can grow and get better at things.
Allow me to play the devil's advocate for a second.
Absolutely.
A lot of our corporate-driven culture is driven by the myth of the visionary founder. And the
Hmm.
visionary founder is oftentimes, oversimplified as just being a visionary. He's a genius, so we must listen to him. And in turn, that means that, okay, like, he does whatever he wants, and he has time for no one because he's a special person, or she is a special person who has this vision of the future, and they have no time for building cultures and talking to lower level employees and giving feedback on stuff that doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is the vision, and even if you're an asshole but you have that vision, it's okay because that's business. So what
Hmm.
would you say to that argument where, the classical American, let's call it like that, American corporate culture where, you can be an asshole if you have success in the end of the day?
Very good question, and thank you for asking it. I would say we need visionary people, but we need visionary people who are aware of what they're good at and what they're not good at, and what is needed and what is needed for an organization and what is not needed. Dictatorship in an organization is not needed. It might run on the short term for your shareholders, but on the long term for a driven organization that will last for centuries or decades, you need to create an open feedback culture and transparency. This doesn't imply that you as a leader have to obey or has to do everything that your people say to you. A direction is always needed, yet it doesn't imply that when somebody gives you a feedback, an employee gives you a feedback, that you have to act upon it. You have to hear it and you have to listen to it, and you have to argument it whether you will follow it or not. But you can do this in a humane and a decent way with proper feedback. And I think on the long term, uh, this will benefit your organization because when people leave your organization in a very bad and uh, not satisfied, you lose an ambassador of your product and your company. When people leave the company with a good feeling and kind of they respect me and they listen to me and people are very straightforward, then they become good ambassadors. Your employees are your ambassadors.
And that's where basically the net promotion score for employees comes from as a metric. If we're talking about soulless business metrics, I think the net promotion score for an employee is one that is directly influenced by that culture of an employee,
Mm,
even a former employee, being satisfied with the work environment enough to promote your company onwards, to recommend it to a friend or whatever else. As a side note, as a side anecdote, my wife works for one company, and she hasn't been working there for too long, but she has been working there enough to understand the culture, understand the main leaders of the company, and so on and so forth. So, and I have two younger brothers. One is 22 and one is 20 at the time, at least, of the story. And they are, of course, entering the workforce, and they are looking for stuff to do. And my wife, she works in HR and recruiting. So, of course, she understands what kind of positions there are, which ones are open and which ones are worth applying to. And, and I am also in business, and I also see a lot of companies, and I have a network of people that are also looking for stuff. So then the question becomes, okay, what do I do? Like, do I give advice to my brothers, in this case, to apply for a particular company with a particular position? Or do I just, cast a wide nets and see what turns out there? And realistically speaking, from an employer perspective, I believe that it's more beneficial when an employee comes with the context of what I'm trying to achieve and what I want to do. So in this case, my wife can come to my brothers and tell them, like, look, this is what our company does, this is what we're looking for, and this is our corporate culture. You can trust me because, well, we're relatives, so I know what I'm talking about. Or, on the other side of the spectrum, I can come in and tell them, like, look, here's a person I've worked with somewhere in my career, and they have a company and they are looking for people as well, so you can talk to them. And they, of course, ended up with my wife's company. And I believe that this is a very nice indicator of that culture because, well, you kind of understand what you're getting into, both as an employer and as an employee. You know the behind the scenes because somebody promotes that value to you directly. And then as an employer, you get the same type of people that thrive within that environment because you are, again, promoting that type of culture. And if you don't have that, you have basically a black box that can both be good and bad.
Absolutely.
So yeah,
So
I tend to
your
agree.
question?
It's just an anecdote. No question. I feel that I agree
It's
with
beautiful.
your testament through the story.
Yet, and it's yet your brother still have to find out if you can explain and explain on a mental level. Yet people, when they enter a company, they still have to dive into the work, and they have to get this feeling of, okay, this works for me or not. Because often I think that's an important side note of they should not follow an advice blindly. Although they're your brothers and they trust you, I would also suggest to tell them, but this comes with a disclaimer. You are responsible for your own success, and you are responsible if you will make this work or not. I can only share my experience, and I love it. But the disclaimer is you have to do it for yourself. Yeah.
Hey, completely agree with you on that. And that's why I try to avoid giving, direct advices like go there and do that. I try to give like options. You
Very
have this
wise.
option
Yeah.
and you have this option. And the more options I give, the better the outcome, I believe, because that stimulates critical thinking in the end. But definitely yes. And even in this example, I cannot predict, the smaller cultures of all the teams in a company that I have personally never worked for. My wife has, of course, but even she does not know the intricacies of every single team, of every single vertical in every single country, and so on and so forth. And they are very diverse and very multicultural themselves. So even with the best of intentions, there's limitations as to what can and will be realistically given as context.
Absolutely.
So yeah, coming back to, talking about you, not me. This is why we're here at the end of the day. I know that a lot of those ideas either accepted or not. But a lot of the time, it requires change out of an organization. I don't know
Mm,
how your experience is, but I rarely see companies with perfect cultures where everything is ideal and they can't approve anything. I'm guessing
mm,
that's the case for you as well. So, walking through change
exactly.
management, then, how do you see the most effective strategies towards that change management, especially when implementing those types of cultures that support feedback and promotes the employee well-being at the end of the day?
Yeah. Well, let me give you an example. I once was a general manager, and we had two spots, each where we had in each spot 150 persons working as educators, teachers, and we had to open a third spot, so we had to employ an extra 150 people. Yet we couldn't open this one particular spot with just 150 new people, so we had to rearrange and mix all these the old people with the new people. So we had to make about, I think, 30 new teams. And so, yeah, that was quite a change on organizational level, but also on cultural level, because we were implementing a new way of working at the same time. And well, I think we made it a success because only 2% of the persons finally left the organization. And I think that was due to the fact that we did a lot of inquiries, investigations, and talks with people on what is important to them, what kind of work they wanted to do, what were their values, uh, yeah, what was important to them, what talents that they have, and what talents did they want to work at in the future. So we were really, really, really careful and vigilant about uh, the new assemblies of the teams. We did that together with all the managers and all the people, the leaders involved, and all the 450 people. It was very time consuming, um, yet I think it was the best way to do it at that moment to make it a success. It's when people management really comes in, and finding and connecting people with each other, and yeah, really diving into this open communication.
Can you tell me a little bit more about the insights of how that actually worked? So you told me that you went in
Mhm.
and you basically asked the people what's important to them, what do they want to work on, and so on and so forth. But how do you realistically do that for an organization this large? So you mentioned like 150 people at the very
Yeah,
least.
yeah.
Like just one-on-ones or, questionnaires or I don't know, AI tools. Like what's your approach?
We had one-on-one. We had questionnaires, and the people discussed the questionnaires one-on-one with their leader. And then the leaders, we all came together because we were, yeah, different, I think about 25, but we had, so the managers of all the three places came together, and the big management team who had the overview of all. So we combined the one-on-ones and the team meetings and the questionnaires, and we brought everything together. Um, and we did several proposals of the reorganized organigram and the reorganized teams. People afterwards could still give feedback and um, ask for another position. Or, but if I remember well, in reality, it was we managed to succeed to have almost everybody in the spot that they wanted at that moment.
Hmm.
So it was a combination of we didn't use AI tools. We did online questionnaires, um, and the human side of the one-on-ones. And I think that is when you are in reorganizations, this the human aspect of talking and having face-to-face conversations is very, very important. At those days, I was a lot on the floor talking with everybody from from the people in the kitchen to the managers to having conversations.
When do you find the time, though? Like, how much time did it take you, the overall process of talking to everybody, going through the questionnaires, going through the one-on-ones?
Yeah. Well, if if you have a job of that an extensive or an intensive change in your organization, there is always something that I wouldn't say suffer, but will go down a little bit. Often for corporates or for profit organizations, it's the revenue. And so you need to be prepared for those kinds of reorganizations. There will be a drop down in revenue or income, but it will go up again afterwards. I think the quick change, because otherwise the curve of going down will only follow.
Mm.
If you don't do the change or the transformation in your organization properly and with time, the curve will go down afterwards because people will be dissatisfied. They will leave the organization. You have to put new people in place. Uh, it is time consuming. I worked a lot at those days, but I did it with pleasure. And I think, I loved it. It is one of the, when you occupy a leadership position, there, if you don't do that with your heart, if you don't have a heart for people, don't start with it. And the second thing is, you have to know your business. It's not only good to love people. It's always good to love people, but with
Mm.
love only, you don't make good business. So you need to know your business, and you need to know what you're good at and what you're not good at. And the third thing is, sometimes you just have to listen to your gut. When is the right timing to do something? And often when you go to that, and a lot of managers, myself included, and a lot of managers that I had in my podcast, managers that had 50,000 people working for them, they said, I always listen to my gut. What is my gut telling me? And then I check with my nearest people. Do we have the right plans to achieve it? Do we do it with the heart? And I think these three things, when you love the people, you know what you have to do, uh, and you follow your gut, the right timing, because that's essential. It will be a success.
Then those are very, very wise words, I believe. But again, hard to implement
Mhm,
in reality, especially depending on the scope of the organization and the
mhm,
complexity of the relationships that are already in place and the goals that they have set up for themselves and where they want to go from one point to the next point. So at the end of the day, mm, how do you like practically nurture it on on a constant basis? I'm guessing you cannot just go in, do some change management, pivot the culture, talk with everybody for like, I don't know, 6 months, and then go away
mhm,
and come back in 5 years, right? I'm guessing it's a continuous process where you set it up and then you launch it and then you need to actually support it. So, in the terms of change management, when you've already succeeded,
mhm,
like in your example, 2 to 3% turnover, that's great for any organizational
mhm,
change to happen. So once you've done that, how do you
mhm.
support that change actually takes effect?
Uh, Great question. Well, first of all, you need to be aware that there's always change. Sometimes it's bigger than others. And believe what we did afterwards, because we had, is that it's there. You need to give people time to integrate and to get everything settled down again. Um, often what you see in companies is the change after change after change after change. You know, you have a new manager coming up and another again and again change. People need time to integrate, and people need to feel that they are involved in the transformation process, that they're updated. We did a lot of communication. Every week we send out a newsletter with the latest news on the transformation. We had people writing articles themselves about how they perceive the change, with their suggestions. It is a constant process of. It's not only the 6 months change that you do, but it works way long after. So you really have to schedule on the long term and creating this culture of change and the awareness that change will be there all the time. You don't. It doesn't have to be as intensive uh, as like in my example. But we are living in a changing world, and if there's one thing that is certain, is that everything is uncertain. And so it is creating also a culture of the not knowing for the people, uh, and accepting that change is part of life, as you would say, of business anyway. So um, yeah, I think that is, and that needs time, and I think that needs it takes time, and it takes also for you as a leader, you have to own up to it. Because if you see change as just something that needs to be ticked out of the box, you know, just tick it off. Now we have done the change. Um, it will not be a success. Change is about managing. Management is already the wrong word. It's about it's about humans, and humans are. This is not AI. This is, you know, humans need to be heard and to be seen. So if you want that to be successful, you need to spend time on that. And if you're as a leader are not willing to do so, well, I think you're not in the right place. But that's my personal opinion.
And that's valid. I believe that's completely valid. Um, and what I wanted to ask you in that vein
Mhm.
is, how do you feel it works when the tables are turned, basically? I'll explain what I mean. So,
Mhm.
in the example of Sigli, our company, we've been on the market for 10 years. So, over those
Mhm.
10 years, we have changed several times. And we have some people that are with us since the very beginning of the company. And I vividly remember when there was a time when we were a very young, rash organization where it was culturally very accepted to, stay overtime and just stay in the office to have
Mm.
fun together, to play video games, for example, or just go out drinking, or just,
Uh,
fool around because everybody was 20 something, you know, Max, like, I think was 30. The oldest person in the company was probably like 30 at the time. Everybody was young, everybody was rash, everybody had more energy than
mm.
experience, and everybody wanted, a place to funnel that energy to give it into something. But then over time, of course, we've gotten older, and the people that have played computer games once upon a time have gotten children, often more than one,
Mm.
have gotten gray hairs in their beards. They've grown beards, and then they've gotten gray hairs in those beards. And staying over time and not spending time with your family suddenly became kind of, not the normal thing to do. And people have shifted their culture, their experiences to something else. But at the same time, the hiring processes were still very much directed at hiring those younger, more energetic people. And what we've
Mm.
noticed is that those younger, energetic people are no longer as comfortable working with us as they were beforehand, for the very simple reason because most of the leadership is no longer that. We are no longer as young, we are no longer as energetic, and our values are a little bit different, and we're thinking about a little bit of a different thing. So, and the people that have been with us since the very beginning, some of them still remained young. Maybe
Mm,
not biologically young, but young at heart. And what they see is that, well, the company has changed. This is no longer the company I knew, and what's the point? So sometimes the change happens not when you control it, not as a direct kind of organizational change where you come to it very identifiably, where you understand what you want to do, but rather as a natural thing. With
mm,
time passes, people change, people get older, market changes, borders change, stuff changes, and then there are people who are left in the middle, basically, where the process was not controlled. It was not something that was made out of a conscious decision to do so. It just happened. And then you're kind of
mhm,
left where none of your friends no longer want to stay after work with you, or none of your friends have any like shared context because they are talking about kids, and you're still in the
mm,
phase where you're not ready to talk about kids. So
mm,
sorry for the long-winded again anecdote, more so than a question. But the
mhm.
question is, how do you manage that? Like, I understand how you manage controlled change, but then how do you anticipate change that is uncontrolled and uncontrollable, I guess?
Good question. Again, Max. Well, for me, that requires the power of self-reflection for in every leader. Given the circumstances, he has to ask, he or she, or X, has to ask himself every time, am I still on the right spot um, for this company? Am I the right person with the capabilities that I have now, with everything that I've done so far? Am I still the one who is getting this company or getting my organization into the next 10 years or 5 or 10 years? And if I want to do that, what do I need? Where do I need to change? Because like you say, the outside circumstances that change, you cannot control. The only thing that you can change is yourself. So where do you have to adapt? Where do you need to change? And are you willing to do so? Um, because indeed, if you are getting children, these questions come. These questions raise. Do I want to spend more time with my children? Which is a valid question. But then it has its implications on the company.
Yeah.
So it's a choice for you or for the leaders who are leading the company to be constantly aware: am I still on the right spot? And is it time for another generation? If you want to grow more into a corporate organization, you need older gray bearded men. Maybe probably more than when you want to keep the energy and the vibes of a startup. And so I think it's very important for the leaders of those kinds of companies that come from a scale up, from a startup to scale up, and even like a bigger organization. Um, what is the intention? What is the mission that we are going through? And where do I fit in there? What is my place? And maybe we need somebody else? And do I dare to step aside?
Yeah, I guess you're right. Like, self-reflection is probably the only true way of noticing when the tides shift, when those
Yeah.
organizational changes need to happen. And then you must control that, without noticing. It's very hard to do.
Um, because the risk of success is that one remains blind for all the changes around them, or the non-adaptability of oneself to the changes around them.
True, true. So let's talk a little bit about the tech side of things.
Mm,
So, for example, you've mentioned one-on-ones, which makes sense. You know, you have video, you have ideally a physical
mhm,
presence, and you have recordings, I'm guessing, sometimes where applicable and if applicable. But I'm
mhm.
interested specifically about surveys. So, from my experience, people do not like doing surveys. Like, if you send a survey to a 300-person organization, you're lucky if you get like 100 replies back, and then there's still the question of whether or not those replies are actual substantial data that you can work with, or is it something that was filled
Mhm.
out just because and you can't really trust what's written there. In your
Yeah.
experience, like, how do you manage that uncertainty in the processes? Do you implement specific technical solutions that help you do that, or is it again comes down to talking to people and understanding what makes them tick and whether or not they like questionnaires that much?
Uh, But first of all, what is the intention of sending out a questionnaire and a survey? In my case, or in the case that where we use them, the intention was to have an overview of people's talents, careers, attitudes, and we made them very aware that their next position was depending on it. So they had a big interest in filling in the questionnaire in the right way. So everybody replied because their job depended on it. So that is a very clear example of how if people are really implied and they see the importance of the filling in the questionnaire, they will do it. If there is no immediate interest or no immediate importance for them, yeah, then you will get results that might show more social desirable answers or uh, only half participants. So I think it all comes down of, is the questionnaire the right way uh, of asking your questions, or the information that you need, the data that you need, is that the right tool for it? And so you really have to define what is it that you want to know and what kind of tool is appropriate for it. And for some things, it's a one-on-one. For other things, it's a questionnaire. For other things, it might be a gathering with everybody. Um, and you're right. I would just gamble on sending out one questionnaire. It's a mixture of all the different kind of tools.
Mm. So I guess then the kind of the statistical edge comes out with having more tools aimed at a particular goal rather than just one tool being the best tool there is.
Mm,
Okay, in that vein, a lot of organizations are now optimizing through AI, and I'm
yeah.
sure you've heard them. I'm sure you've seen them. And on the one side of the spectrum, we have people that tell us that everything will be AI. Like, jobs will be replaced, no recruiters are needed because AIs will interview people, no HR is going to be needed because an AI is going to be your own personal assistant and it will have unlimited amounts of empathy that no HR in the world will ever be able to achieve, and it will be always on your
Mm,
side, and yada yada yada, and it will protect the company at the same time. On the other side of the spectrum, over here, then you have people saying that, okay, AI is very limited, it can only do so much, and generally speaking, any tech in human centric processes is only a very, very limited tool, and you more so are probably misusing it than leveraging any sort of efficiency out of the approach. And I'm
mm.
sure that those two camps, they have their merits, both of them. But in your experience, what do you feel? Where do we draw the line? Do we need to optimize everything through tech as much as possible all the time? Or do we need to be very conscious of tech and not let it ruin our, very delicate balance of the human and the interhuman relationship? Or is it something else?
Mm. Interesting. Yeah, it's really interesting topic. I recently read an article. It was really beautiful, and he said, this is a useless discussion because AI is there, will be there, and will replace any employee. That was his point of view. And he said, the human beings will be there uh, to work in the fields and to have conversations, and but almost everything that is related to data and to presentations and to Excel sheets and all these kinds of business, it will be replaced by AI because AI is not complaining, will always give you the right feedback. Um, so I do believe that a lot of technical issues that we do now in meetings and meetings and meetings and meetings, discussing Excel sheets and um, will be replaced by AI. I'm sure of that. Yet, so I think we cannot deny the impact of AI. It is though very important to look how does a human being fits in here, and what is a human being, and how can a human being grow, and where do human beings have to grow and to learn. So I think if we see AI as, wow, and staying again curious about how does this machine developing works, in fact, and how can we as humans grow in the things that we're good at. You know? Uh, I wonder if one day, uh, I always think about the robots that are helping the elderly people in Japan when they are in an elderly home. Yet, which could be very good. Yet, I don't want to have a robot holding my hand when I die, and I want to have a human being when I die. And I think that
See,
is,
I don't want to die at all, so.
well, that's also an interesting point.
Yeah. But ideally, not by the way of being replaced with an AI, by just
Mm,
uploading my mind into my PC or whatever and then living that way. Nope. Either full on immortality in my biological body or not at all. So
mm.
that's where I draw the line.
And I once saw a documentary where it was I think it was 5 or 6 years ago. It was a very rich American couple, and they just copied themselves into kind of an AI thing, and they modulated like puppets, which was really resembling each person, and they were talking to each other, you know, because when one person would die, the other one would still reply in a way that he was still, it was a she or two she's, it was a lesbian couple, that the other one was still living. And it's fascinating, but is it desirable? Well, not for me.
Hmm.
But will it be there? Yes. And that is where I think, if that every person, especially also in companies, we need to be aware and very conscious about what is this doing, and how does this influence our us as human beings, and not just accepting everything because it's there and it is possible, but you still have to be curious and raise questions. Is this really what we need? Is this what we need to do, or is this just what we must do because everybody is doing it? And but is this what we need, in fact, for our company, for our society, for our world? Is this what we need?
Yeah. I've also seen the discussion online a couple of days ago, or maybe even a day ago. Um, Again, one of those online AI
Mm,
discussions, whether it's a net positive or a net negative for our society and when will it take us and blah, blah, blah. And naturally, the argument of, okay, AI is bad because it is driven by optimizing the stuff that I do not need to have optimized. I
Mm,
want to have more time to do art. I want to have more time to write. I want to have more time for leisure. And I want AI to take care of my basic needs, to clean my house,
mm,
to do laundry or whatever. How is it that AI is going the opposite direction? It draws for me, it writes for me, and then I am more free to do my laundry on my own, which is, a substantial argument. Fair enough. No arguments for me.
nice.
That's kind of weird. But at the same time, in the discussion, what I liked is one person mentioned that just because an AI can do art, it does not mean that other art is devalued from it, because
Mm,
most people still appreciate art by virtue of being created by other people. You can buy a 3D printer and make like a statue, right? You
mm,
could do that for a long, long time now. Does that make it as interesting as somebody making the same statue in their own hands? No. The same applies to drawings. Like, can an AI make a drawing? Sure. But does it make it as compelling as somebody else painting it? No. And I don't feel that that's going to change precisely by what you've mentioned, basically. People
mm.
are, a lot of them, basically the same on the inside. And you value that human connection, you value that human insight, and you value that point of view. And art and literature and all of those things that are disrupted by AI, and there's still value in it just because it's being made by people. If it's not made by people,
Absolutely.
then value is being
You
lost.
know, I'm sure there are programs already existing that could replace you as an interviewer, that even could replace me as a as somebody as an interviewee. But I bet that the audience, let's keep it between us, Max. I would never do an interview with an AI machine. Why would I do that? You know, you ask a question, you send some preparations, but this discussion is going in fact, it's more or less what we agreed upon. Still, the questions are different. You pick in to something that I say. You know, that is the interaction, the movement. That's yeah, that's the human aspect of an interview.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes I still follow English classes, and for my preparations, for my pronunciations, I use AI. So I talk to ChatGPT, and like after 10 minutes, and I had it last weekend, I said, Stijn, but why are you talking to ChatGPT? You have so many British and Australian friends. Just call them and ask them to talk to you. And so I just called Scott, one of my best friends. He's a founder of and we had a 1 hour chat, and I just used the new words that I learned from my English classes, and he helped me with it, and it was just beautiful, you know. And that's the difference for me. I could
True.
have talked for 1 hour with ChatGPT, but now I had a great conversation with one of my best friends, and we helped each other and lift each other up. And that is the difference for me.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I feel that in this world of ours that is so oversaturated with information and technology, we still find time to actually talk to each other and leverage that. And especially when that's relates to the corporate world, because it
Yeah.
dominates so much of our life, that there is still the human
Mm,
element there. Whether or not it's going to be there 5 years from now, 10 years from now, who knows? Because I definitely know a lot of people that would hear you say that, for now, you would never do an interview with an AI person. They would take it as a challenge. They would say, well, give me enough data and I will make a model so convincing that you will not know the difference. And if you do not know the difference, then what's the point? But,
mm,
time will
interesting.
tell. For now, we can tell the difference, at least with enough scrutiny. But let us talk a little bit about the future then. What do you
Mm.
feel? What are the major trends that are going to be under like highlighting, what are going to be supporting the leadership styles and the cultures of the corporate world tomorrow?
Mm. Well, I think that's really hard to say and really hard to predict. What I see in the moment is, as you see it in the world, is the polarization of a really hard ego-driven, result-driven um, leadership uh, versus the more human-centered leadership. And I think these two directions uh, they will go both each in their own direction. Where if they will ever get back together, I don't know. What will be the result of the extremes when we have only human-centered and the AI, the hardcore manager, and versus the people human-centered manager. But I think they first have to go. They will separate a little bit, and well, let's hope that they find their way back again. At least that's what I see now in the world. This polarization and separation of technology and humans. Um, so I think we need to find a way to make the bridge. Will it be next year or in 5 years? I don't know. It's at least that's what I would like to work on to make that bridge. You know, technology is necessary. We wouldn't have cars, we wouldn't have computers, we wouldn't be able to have this conversation. Um, so finding that bridge between the tech world and the the human centered leadership. Yeah, I think that is the challenge.
Well, let's hope that that's a challenge we'll all succeed in and not be replaced by AI that does the same thing, only slightly worse, but much faster than we're able to
Mm.
do. Thank you, Stan. It was a very nice discussion. Thank you very much for your insights and for sharing your experience. Where do people find you? Where do people find more of you?
Well, they can go to preferably my LinkedIn profile, which is Stijn Staes. My website studiostain.com, and my other website is stappenmetstain.be,
You heard it
or they
here,
can just write
folks.
me a mail.
Old school, old school.
But
So thank you.
thank you for inviting me, Max. It was a really beautiful conversation, and I hope your listeners got a little bit of inspiration out of it.
I hope
Thank you
so
for
too.
having me.
I hope so too. Thank you for joining us. And I hope you did get some inspiration from all of this today. Thank you very much for listening to us or watching and listening to us at the same time, which is doubly great. So, if you want to hear more of us or me and some other people, you know where to find more stuff. It's usually somewhere down here or probably down here, depending on the orientation of the device that you're looking at me through. If you want to hear more of the same topics, tell us in the comments. If you disliked what we've talked about, tell us in the comments, because as you already know from our conversation today, communication is the bedrock of a relationship. And I value our parasocial relationship very, very, very much. Thank you all. Bye bye.